We are on the beautiful tropical island of Phu Quoc in Vietnam, and this morning we're not going to go to a nice beach or sit at a bar and drink margaritas. No, instead we're going to go to a prison that has been reconstructed and is based on what existed here back in the Vietnam War from about the mid to late, I should say the mid 60s until about the early 70s. We just sort of came out here on the spur of the moment, and English information is kind of thin on the ground here, but it seems to be a prison that dates from the Vietnam War of the 1960s. I thought maybe it might have been, you know, one of these famous or notorious French penal colony things. But no, this is a fairly high-tech prison with layers and layers of barbed wire. The geezer up in that tower there is dressed distinctly in an American-style uniform. According to the literature here, he was a so-called American puppet. And here's a description of the sentry boxes. It says the sentry boxes were well equipped with arms and lighthouses. Prisoners were watched 24 hours a day by American puppet soldiers, of course, who were always ready to shoot at any place that seemed unusual, etc., etc. The sign says that a number of jailbreaks or attempted jailbreaks took place, but it's hard to imagine. I mean, when you look at the layers of barbed wire and the state of security. Now we find out how the jailbreaks were achieved by digging tunnels. And apparently there was one incident in 1969 in which 21 of the prisoners managed to escape and actually make it back to the Viet Cong, which had a base here on Phu Quoc, at the very southern end of Vietnam. I had occasionally read about or heard about the so-called tiger cages, but I've never actually sort of knew exactly what they were. But with this exhibit here, it's you get a very good idea. Now, the idea was to keep the prisoners in a confined space, you know, big enough so they could, well, small enough so that they couldn't really sit down or stretch out or stand up. They would have to spend their time stooped over. And on top of everything else, all of the walls were this sort of sharp barbed wire. The box, which I guess you'll find in other kind of penal colony areas, a place with several prisoners were crammed inside this fairly confined steel box, and it was shut, and it was almost total darkness inside, and they stayed in there for several days. Not exactly luxury accommodation. We're inside one of the cell blocks, and according to the museum, this is the kind of stuff that took place there. The museum is centered around these this collection of cell blocks, which inside is sort of recreated to an attempt to show the conditions that apparently took place there. This is what the prisoners did for fun. They played music on instruments that they made themselves out of the crudest materials. The prisoners are showing defiance by saying such slogans, according to the museum, as "Down with terrorism." So, if you're on the beautiful tropical island of Phu Quoc and you get tired of sipping margaritas outside of a turquoise beach, then come away to it all at the Phu Quoc Prison.